The dust and drip resistant build keeps me confident.
All right, welcome back to the Nikon Theater. How's everybody doing? We got a very, very special treat right now, and something that I'm really excited about and I've been thinking about for the last few months as we've been putting this all together. Something a little bit different for the theater stage for us is a panel discussion. And we've got several of them over the next 3 days. And Josh, could I get a little bit more? There we go. We good? Got me now? All right, good. So we got several panels discussions over the next several days, but we're going to kick it off with the most important today, which is on photojournalism and storytelling. And we have 3 of the top photojournalists in the world with us today. So I'm going to introduce them one at a time to the theater stage. How about we bring up Amy Vitale, amazing journalist and conservation photographer. Hello. You can go down there.
Hello, everybody.
We have 4-time Pulitzer Prize winner Carol Guzy with us today.
Woo! Hola.
Who's got a luckier job than I do? Hugs and kisses from the journalists. And we have her here
Chatting.
in the midst of book signings and craziness. Her last book just came out, Of Love and War, Lynsey Addario.
I'm not going to kiss you.
Wow. Well, thank you, ladies, for coming. And thank you guys for being here. And if you're tuning in on Nikon Live, thank you for visiting. We're going to jump right into this because we only have a short 45 minutes, but this is pretty amazing. And I'm going to start from the outside and we'll work our way in. Explain to everybody how you discovered photography and you knew it would be a part of your life. Amy.
It wasn't actually something intuitive. I was actually an incredibly gawky, shy, introverted girl, and the second I picked up a camera, though, it just made me feel empowered. It was just incredibly empowering. I felt unafraid to go out and talk to people, and it the first thing it did was it was a tool for my own self-empowerment, and slowly as I started getting into it, I realized the more amazing thing about photography is you can actually amplify other people's voices, and it became not about me,
Right.
It became about this amazingly powerful tool that we have.
And Carol, when did you know it was the thing you were going to do?
I went to nursing school to be practical. I had wanted to be an artist, but while in nursing school, I took a darkroom class, and the first time an image came up in a tray, it was the defining moment of my life. It was magical. I can't remember what the picture was, but I remember the feeling as if it was yesterday, and I knew that I wanted to do something with photography, and then photojournalism was just a natural sort of transition from nursing, the foundation of everything I try to do with photography, I think started with nursing school.
I remember my dad had a darkroom, and I still can smell the fixer and the developer.
I know.
And it's just ingrained in my brain probably for life. Lynsey, how about you? What was the drive? What was the thing that got you into photography? When did you know?
I mean, I started shooting when I was like 12, 13, but I was really adamant that I didn't want to be a photographer, that I wanted to do something intellectual, whatever that meant. Maybe it was rebelling against being raised by hairdressers. But when I was 21, I moved to Argentina and I was studying Spanish, and that's where I started shooting and becoming aware of pictures in the newspaper. And that's really where I started learning that you can tell stories with photographs. And that, to me, was a defining moment. And then I remember walking into an exhibit of Sebastião Salgado's work, and that was sort of it, because I saw these unbelievable images on a huge scale. And they really provoked me emotionally, and I just stood there and cried, and that was it.
What you do is challenging, and many times, you're out there in very difficult conditions. But Carol, what drives you as a photojournalist? What is it that moves you to do what you do?
I think telling stories to me is my oxygen. I feel like it's not about us making great pictures, it's about the narrative of others, and it's such a powerful tool, and it sounds cliche, but we do give voice and shine light on really the darkest places on earth, and sometimes it makes a difference. And I still have that idealistic notion that photographs, there's a great power in a photograph to possibly promote change or at least raise awareness.
Lynsey, what drives you? Because you have been in so many crazy situations and you keep going back.
I mean, the same thing, really. I think also what's driving me more and more is the climate in which we live, that the importance of journalism, being there, telling these stories, you know, the same as Carol, but I think that sometimes I feel so strongly about journalism, not only the photography and getting there and being there and bearing witness, but also the fact that we need journalists to keep people honest. We need people to be accountable for their actions and what they say. And so I think you can do that with photos, and you can do that with journalism itself.
Right.
Did you want me to answer?
Amy, you and I talk all the time.
Did you want me to answer that?
I do, because we talk about this all the time, and it's what drives all of you, what drives many photographers, it always is amazing to me. But again, you're always out there.
I think that the last thing I'm going to add to it's all of that, but also, despite the challenges, in the worst places is where you find the best of humanity, the most resilience, the most incredibly inspiring stories, and I feel like those stories need a light shined on them, and that's what drives me.
So Lynsey, I know
Yes.
you're on your book tour right now, but you're out to tell the next story. And how do you prepare? When you're going on the road, what do you do to prepare?
I think it depends on the country and the assignment. I do research. That's pretty much the first thing I do, is pull up all the recent articles, and I start reading about where I'm going and the story I'm setting out to do. I contact colleagues and other journalists and photographers who've worked there recently. Often I'm looking into the safety, the security situation, so whether I have that conversation with my colleagues or whether it's with local journalists on the ground, I have to figure out how I can go about telling that story safely. And then the packing is a whole different process, which we all, I'm sure, have gotten it down to a T over the years. But, you know, there are certain things. We all have our kit, and it's, you know, I take different camera bodies, different lenses, depending on what the assignment is. And then I take different gear.
Amy, you mix everything up. Video, still, productions. You're a crew in yourself. Within yourself, but how do you, when you go to your next assignment, how are you going to prepare?
Well, almost the same as Lynsey, and I think right now, this summer I had like 20 countries with different climates and altitudes and filming and shooting, so it's always, you know, you just have to be incredibly versatile, and I think the other thing is just also realizing that you don't actually need that much, sort of, like less is always more. And so I tend to be much more minimalistic and go with the flow and not stress out too much. But I think, as you said, reading is so, so important. I mean, you need to, and talking to people before you even set foot and get on the airplane. Like, you need to be in touch with the people on the ground and establish what, you know, who those people are that are going to help you and protect you and keep you safe, really. And also, I think the other important thing, it's not just about packing, but once you get off that plane, you know, you meet the crew on the ground and figure out and sort of get the blessings of whoever's in charge, because once you do that, it just spreads like wildfire through a community, and it really keeps you safe.
And I know you're in these distant places where internet's an issue. I would think electricity is an issue. I think it's obvious to say you probably pack extra batteries, but what do you do in situations where it's not readily available to you?
Well, it's amazing how inventive people can be. I don't know. I mean, there's just, the thing I realize is there are no, there's never a problem in a way. Like, you always work through challenge, and I find that people are a lot more creative in places where they have less than in our very, you know, sort of hyper industrialized, like techie world. I love kind of being in these remote places where it's fun. I mean, you have to really problem solve and figure out things.
Yeah, and I think with electricity, you can always use like a car inverter. That's something we use a lot, and I think that, you know, a car becomes sort of your second home, because you can run, you know, you could charge batteries, you could charge your laptop, and so even if you don't have electricity, there are generators that we've run off. We carry satellite phones, we carry, you know, so we have, depending on where we're going, we can bring extra gear to make sure we can file or do what we need to.
And people have solar everywhere
Yeah.
now. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just amazing. Like in the last
A lot of
5
changes through
years,
the
like
years.
solar is everywhere.
Right. Gotcha. I
And
would
I-
think
plus-
that. Oh,
just gonna
no,
say,
go ahead.
I just
No.
wanted to honor the fixers and translators that we
Yes.
work
Oh,
with
that's
because
a great point.
they save us, you know, in so many ways, and they go through the same risks that we take, you know, and they help us, and I can't say enough to honor everyone that has helped me along the way, and most have stayed friends.
So as part of the preparation, you're reaching out to, I guess, a
Yeah.
network of people
The
that
network
you
of
go
people,
to in
find someone
different parts of the
find
world.
someone you can trust that's a local that can really
fixer.
really a fixer.
That's what they call the
We're supposed to
fixer.
call them local assistants now, but they'll always be fixers to me. But also, I think people pre-plan too much sometimes. I think it's really good to research, but it's a problem to get a preconceived idea of what the story is. You need to sort of go and let the story tell itself,
Sure.
as opposed to creating the narrative. So.
Lynsey, I'm going to point this one directly at you because it's something you have said about being in the field makes you feel alive. Can you explain that?
I mean, sometimes. Yeah, I feel when I'm sort of in my life and in New York and wherever I am, I have a million things that I'm doing. I'm on the phone, I'm walking, I'm talking to people, I'm doing this. But when I'm out in the field and I'm shooting, there's no other place I want to be. I'm very focused on whatever's in my viewfinder and the light and the composition and the story I'm telling. And there are very few times in my life where that happens now because I have so many distractions, just basically with life. And so I think there is a feeling that I get when I'm out and I'm shooting that I feel not only alive, but I feel myself and I feel passionate and driven and very focused.
Carol, you and I have talked about this a lot, and I think it's so important that it's not just about going out and making the story, but connecting with your subjects and developing long-term relationships. I find that so important. Can you address that?
Well, to me, I feel like long-form, photojournalism has kind of taken a hit in the climate of journalism recently, but I can't imagine doing stories on people and doing them justice without spending time. And if you spend the time, of course, you're a human first. You're not a photographer. They have to trust you. You have to basically walk their path, live their journey. And I don't know that there's anyone in any story that I've done, a long-term story, that it hasn't remained in my life still to this day. And I feel that that's the greatest riches. I mean, you're never going to get rich as a journalist, or at least I'm not. But those are my riches, are these people that not only do they let me tell their story and open their lives, their most intimate moments, but they still keep me around afterwards as family.
Right. The young lady that just came up, you have a very special relationship with her. Can you delve into that a little bit?
Yeah, Mamuna, they came as a group from the war in Sierra Leone. They're amputees. They came to get prosthetics, and I did a long-term project on them, took a leave of absence, and I wanted to actually adopt Mamuna at one point, and they said, no way, she needs a stable family, and you were anything but stable. But the family in DC that found her to eventually adopt her after they got a political asylum said that they found her through my pictures, and they fit like a glove, and they decided to make, she told me recently that it was her decision to make me godmother so that I could always be part of her family, because she said I was the first person she trusted after the war. And it touches me. She's 21 now, and it just touches me that I've had this young girl
Watched
her grow up, and she's so amazing and successful. So.
And we've talked about that, and you've inspired me to do that too with the subjects that I'm photographing. Amy, talk about relationships with the subjects.
I don't know, I feel like crying hearing that story.
It's okay, anybody wants to cry, it's
cry
okay.
first.
This is a very touching, emotional question.
That's the greatest ultimate gift, and I think that's probably, you asked earlier what drives us. I think that is probably what drives us, is creating real change and creating a better world that we all want to live in, and it's just, that's so beautiful. I can't follow that.
All right. Wow. Speaking of other things, you tell these stories. Sometimes the stories aren't great stories. But starting with you, Lynsey, can you recall a story or stories that brought a really positive change from the images that you created?
I mean, I can think of one in South Sudan. I met this young boy, Chol, who was on the run. He was about anywhere between 9 and 12. Most of these kids don't know their age. I spent about 5 days with him. He had fled his village. It was attacked by government troops. He didn't know if his mother was alive. He saw his father was killed, and he was on the run for months. And I met him and spent 5 days with him and gave my phone number to his grandmother. And when they reached Kenya, where they were going, they called me and said, "Oh, Miss Lynsey, we made it. We're in Kenya." And so then 6 months later, I got an assignment to go to Lair, where he and his family were from. And I decided to look for his mother to see if she was still alive. And I brought a copy of the New York Times Magazine with me. And I found her in a food distribution of 17,000 people.
Wow.
And gave her the magazine of her son. And she just cried and said, "He's alive." She had no idea he was alive. And so I said, "What can I do?" And she said, "I want you to record a video of me so I can speak to my son." And so I recorded a video of her saying, "Son, don't come home. There's no life for you here. Go get educated in Kenya and come back once you're educated." And so I flew to Kenya and brought her the video, brought him the video. And so that was like, you know, to me that was amazing. It was the best gift because I showed him that his mother was alive and the mother that her son was alive.
Yeah. I know, Amy, we talk about, you know, the positive side of the things you do and what comes of those images and those stories that you tell. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I kind of get, I think I get caught, I just don't stop on one thing. And so literally I'll spend years and years on one thing. And currently that thing is an elephant sanctuary in northern Kenya.
Yes.
That is the first ever indigenous owned and run sanctuary in all of Africa, meaning it's not outsiders doing this. This is the community taking ownership, saying we want to protect the wildlife, the landscape, our destiny for themselves. And I just found it so beautiful because all you hear are the negative stories, the poaching, and all of that's real, but I just want to shine a light on this amazing community and what they're doing. And so I've had I managed to meet Dave Matthews, the musician, in the middle of Standing Rock in a blizzard, and I was like, "I know you love wildlife. Why don't you bring your family and come to Kenya with me?" And managed to convince this incredible human being to do that. We made a film, we had a huge fundraiser, and I've just been really committed to kind of making sure they just had their 2nd year anniversary, and I want to make sure they thrive and succeed, and I want to do everything I can as, in our power to help them.
Yeah, it's an important fact to know, too, that video that you produced, Dave ran at every one of his 40 concerts, as part of his show.
And
to
did a
bring
whole
awareness,
online campaign.
to conservation.
And it was just
and it's also important how deep you got into this.
Yeah.
You became part of promotion. You became the photographer. You became the cinematographer. You were all part of the production, but you really immersed yourself as a sort of a one-woman crew as part of production. I know you had a little bit of help, but how did that shape the whole program that you guys got out there?
I think that, I did have amazing help, but the truth is it just makes you realize how much one individuals or a small group of people can really do to create change. You don't need tons of money. You don't need power. Every single person in this audience has power to go out and make, the change that you want. If you don't like it, go out and be the change. Be that social, activist or voice. I mean, we have more power today than we ever have, and I just want this to inspire everybody to realize that.
Yeah, very much so. Carol, can you reflect on that?
Amy's living my dream. I mean, honestly, if I wasn't a photographer, I would rescue animals. It's the love. So I'm so proud of what you're doing. And in a positive way, I think, people do turn off when it's something negative and you're showing them a solution. And I think if we don't give people balance, if we don't also give them the hope, just showing them the problem, they turn away. But if you give them the hope, there's always a glimmer of hope, even in the worst situations. And I don't know, I'm just so proud of both of these people. I'm like honored to just to sit on the stage with both of them.
So go ahead.
I mean, the only thing that comes to mind just quickly right now that made an immediate difference, I mean, a lot of pictures have made a difference, but when I was in Kosovo, I found a it was after the Serbs left and people came back to Kosovo, but the psychiatric hospital was abandoned, and it was like a Hitchcock movie. It was horrendous conditions. The patients were taking care of each other or trying to. It was just horrible. It couldn't be worse. But as soon as we ran the stories, aid groups rushed in and helped everybody, and it was like the power of the photograph was very obvious at that point in time. So and she's right also, Amy, about making a difference for one. We can't change the world, and I think a lot of times with journalism, people get overwhelmed because we show them so much of the desperation in the world. But in Haiti, I covered Haiti for decades, and I realized at a certain point I, A, couldn't stay sane and still cover all the tragedy in Haiti. But B, I could help one family. You know, I could still do my pictures, do my stories, try to make that difference, but I could make a difference for one family, and I've taken care of them my whole lives. And it's not great, but it's way better than their life would have been. And if everyone just did that for one person, just imagine, you know.
Right.
Can I throw in one thing about Carol?
Of course you can.
So, you know, I know we can't really know what the impact is truly, but I mean, Carol impacted me because when I first started, I was working in Kosovo, and I saw Carol at work. And you know, you were my great inspiration. You were the one, I mean, I saw, and it was interesting because all the other, you'll probably never know this, but all it was basically you were the only female. You know, there were not many women working. And
She knows now.
but honestly, all the men were like always watching what Carol did, because Carol was like quiet and sort of worked into these amazing situations. And I noticed that like there would always be a pack of people and Carol was always away from the pack. And she was just an enormous inspiration to me. And yep, I'm just filled with gratitude. Thank you for creating this panel.
Thank you guys for being here.
Me cry
This is a perfect segue as you've set it up for me nicely. Lynsey, as a photographer, who was your greatest inspiration? Who is your greatest inspiration?
I mean, there wasn't one person. I think it's exactly what, you know, I think you were the same for me. I remember I saw you in Haiti, and I think, you know, it's incredible because there are very few women, and so I think it's important to not only sort of look at people working around you, but to honor them and to pay tribute to them, because without people like Carol and Jody and, you know, none of Amy and I could not do this work. And so, you know, I think it's really important. Sebastian Salgado, as I said, Jim Noctaway, you know, there are different people who have influenced me, Sally Mann, Mary Ellen Mark. I mean, there are different photographers, not necessarily conflict, some conflict and some just photographers that I love their style.
Yeah, and I'd like to just take a quick second because I've been so proud to know this woman who is sitting in our audience, who was a pioneer for the most part for women in journalism. And I'd like to acknowledge Jody Cobb, who's sitting in the front row. Totally unrehearsed, Jody. And I think it's fair to say that Jody paved a path for many women in journalism, and thank you. And it was just impromptu you were here, so thank you for being here. I want to sort of switch the gear a little bit to give some insight on the type of gear that you use. Lenses, cameras, what you go in with. So, well, first, how long have you been working with Nikon, Amy?
I was born with the Nikon in my
I
hand.
love that answer. I was born with it.
No, my whole life, my whole working life, I've always shot Nikon, and I've loved. Nikon has actually pushed me to be a better storyteller, because with each new development, it's like I was forced to become a filmmaker because of Nikon. I was terrified, but you guys were the ones that really made that possible.
D300S.
Yep, and today, you know, I keep transitioning, and I realize with each new development, what it's really doing is the gear. It's not, for me, it's never been about the gear. Everybody that knows that about me. But the thing that it does is it becomes invisible. It allows me to do my job, and it's super intuitive. And now I'm using the Z7, and that has completely transformed how I shoot, especially with filmmaking. It's just been a real game changer.
Why is that?
So many reasons, which I'll talk about at 4 p.m.
Come back at 4, because Amy's speaking at 4 o'clock today.
Seriously, the reasons are, I mean, it's just so it's invisible. It's become invisible. It's just me and my subjects, whether it's humans or animals, it's become invisible. And that's really, really important in the work that we do.
Lynsey, with you, you have a great story about the first time you touched the Nikon camera.
I mean, I was like 12 or 13. My dad had it at his house, and I sort of saw it and said, "What is that?" And he said, "Oh, a client gave me this camera." And I said, "Well, can I have it?" And he said, "Sure." And that was it. I mean, I took it home and spent hours trying to figure out the f-stop and the speed, the shutter speed, and then I bought a photo book, and I was obsessed for years. And then in high school, I learned how to develop and print in the darkroom, and I've always shot with Nikon since I was 12 or 13. And like Amy, I'm not a tech person. I'm not, I just need a camera that I am comfortable with, that I can use under tough conditions when I have very little time, that it's, for me, the Nikon's always been that. Mm-hmm. And I love the Z7.
So Carol, I got to throw this one to you too. We might as well get everyone's thoughts here.
Well, I've lived through a lot of technological changes, dramatic. I'm from way back in the dinosaur age of, film, reels.
That film, remember
film?
And
the Nikon Fs, I tried really hard to kill them, but you couldn't kill a Nikon F. But I've used Nikon most of my career. I mean, I worked for newspapers, so we switched to Canon for a little while, but almost 99% of my career has been with Nikons, and now the mirrorless has been my dream come true. I mean, we cover, or at least I cover, a lot of delicate situations, and that camera click sounds like you're shooting a cannon off, and now to have that silent mode and have it be light. I mean, it's just, I took it to Guatemala recently, and I was just so like, this changes the way I can function, because I don't have to distract the people that I'm photographing or whatever the situation is. It doesn't have, we can be invisible like we want to be, a little bit more.
Yeah, and I found with the viewfinder now, just the ability to see what's happening. The exposure's there. You could never see that before, right, with film or other digital cameras, DSLRs. And that doesn't make them bad. It's just a different opportunity to know, especially shooting concerts or things where the exposure is so critical in the highlights that I can tune through the eyepiece, through the electronic viewfinder, the exact exposure that I'm looking for. So those little subtleties become a big thing. Carol, continue on. Talk to me a little bit about your lens selection. When you're out, what are your favorite lenses to shoot?
I've always used 2 bodies and 2 zoom lenses, the wide angle zoom and like a 70 to 200. Mm-hmm. I like zooms because I'm a moments photographer, and I miss so many moments anyway. They're rattling around in my head. I'm going to learn how to paint so I can get them out of my head.
I think you captured some pretty good ones, though. You may have missed a few, but I think you've nailed quite a few.
I missed more, but it's easier not to miss them if you have the zooms than having to change lenses, so that's why.
Which specific focal lengths? 7200 and?
Well, my favorite was like the 17 to 35, 16 to 35, and a 70 to 200, but now I'm using a little bit of everything.
Amy, what are the prime choices you go out with?
So I like everything intimate, wide, and close for the most part. But now that I'm shooting wildlife, I can't get as intimate as I like. So I recently... Just stay away. But I actually just got that 500 millimeter. Oh my goodness, it is unbelievable.
The 500 millimeter 5.6, right?
Yes, and you can handhold that thing, and it's so light. And part of my choice is always like, does it all fit in my backpack? Right. Because I usually have to get to really remote places on my own. With I'm not having people help me carry stuff, so it's all really a tight ship. So generally it really depends what I'm shooting. But I actually, for the elephant story and shooting video, I was using the what is that? The 12 to 24, super wide. But I had to for the filmmaking, and then generally the 24 to 70, and also the 80 to 400.
Funny, we all use such different lenses.
Bring it on.
I like the 24 to 70 2.8, and then I use the prime lenses, so the 28 1.4 and the 35 1.4.
I remember we had a conversation way back when that there was a point in time when the 28 1.4 went away. and we went to a 24-1.4, and you got on the
Yes.
phone with me, and you weren't exactly pleased.
No, I mean, I have the 24-1.4 and I liked
Yeah.
it, but I loved the 28-1.4. And when I got kidnapped in Libya, they took that lens, and that was the worst. It was like, it was fine, okay, I lived, but I want that lens. And so I had to go on eBay and find one. I mean, that lens is beautiful.
So yeah, you were kidnapped in Libya, and you've gone back again.
Still here.
She's
Is
lamenting
that
they
why the
took
title of your
lens.
book is "It's What I Do"?
Because everyone asks, why do you do this? And I'm sure you two have the same exact answer. I don't know. It's what I do. I mean,
But you tell stories, and you bring these stories to everyone else. I would think that's a pretty amazing thing. So I would think durability is a big issue as well when you're out there in the field,
Not
dust
at all.
environments. But this transition, as you mentioned, the 500/5.6, I think it's not just for the situations that you're in. I think we're all looking for lighter, faster, stronger. And again, that I still use the D850 and the D5 quite a bit, low light capabilities shooting. But it's also a nice form factor when it comes to now the mirrorless cameras, where you have a much lighter package to work with. Talk to me though, Amy, just start off, have you used the adapter to adapt to the lenses that you've already had in your bag?
Yep.
Yes, good.
So
But
what would you,
How has that helped you? I mean, I think it's obvious you have a bag of gear sitting there.
right. No, sure. I mean, I need that variety. I need diversity in the lenses I choose, and every assignment is very, very different. So you have to be able to, adapt really quickly. And there's no degradation. It's been a seamless change for me, and it's the details actually in the way the Z7 is. I mean, there's actually this little thing that pops out where your thumb is. I'm getting away from the adapter, but like just the design of the camera
Right, the
has
handling.
made it really easy. I was worried that the heavier lenses would be a problem, but it feels good.
Yep. No, it's a seamless transition. And
Yeah.
if you don't know, the FTZ adapter, which takes all the current Nikon lenses that are out there, including older lenses, manual lenses, autofocus lenses through the years, works seamlessly. No f-stop loss and no change in the focal length. And I think, to me, I've heard it from you guys too, it's the security of the mount, the strength of the mount, that there's no wobble in the mount. And I think that's a big fear of people, and has been
Yeah, you
brought
don't
up.
actually notice it. I mean, I didn't.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the system. So if I were to ask you one lens you could only go out with, and I know it's an unfair question, but I'm asking it anyway, what lens would you go out with? What focal length?
I would take 2.
All right. I knew she was going to say that. Surprise, shocker.
Do I ever listen to you?
No, you don't.
I'd probably take a 35-1.4 and a 24-70 2.8.
So you said 35, so we're assuming the answer is 35.
I mean, maybe it'd be a 28.
All right, maybe 28.
Maybe 20.
Well, I've been using the 24-70 more often now, but I still love that 17-35. I want that back, like you do.
I know.
I really like.
One lens, Amy.
24 to
Give it to
70.
me. Yeah, okay, good. Just going to shift back to challenges out in the field. One of the toughest situations, can you think about one of the toughest situations where you went into it and you thought, this just isn't going to happen, but you made something work? How did you solve the problems? You could take a second to think about it.
I mean, I kind of love, I think that's what we all thrive on, is the challenges. I love the challenges. Bring them on, because that's where creativity comes from. I mean, every situation is difficult. Seriously, what we do is challenging. But that's what drives probably all of us, isn't it? I mean, there's so many situations, Mike, but honestly, I think it's fun. I like that. And I also think it's just the relationships we build and having empathy. And empathy is the greatest tool. It is, I always say this, it is the wellspring of creativity. It really is. So I don't know. I think of those challenges just kind of direct you to where you need to be in a way. Like when one door closes, it means that you're supposed to be somewhere else. So I look for those as cliche as it sounds, I look for the open doors somewhere else, and it's always like 1,000,000 times better than what I had originally thought.
Right. And I know, Lynsey, we did an interview the other day. We produced an interview with Lynsey, and I kind of asked you a question towards the end, and it was a great answer, because I'm glad you didn't answer it the way I asked, if there was one story that stood out, for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think every story I've done sits with me, and there's never one story. I mean, all the people I've photographed, all the situations I've been in, they stay with me over time, and I always sort of revert back to different stories at different times. And I think, whether it's the Korangal Valley or the war in Iraq or maternal mortality or whatever it is, these are stories that live in us. And I think every one of us falls in love with the people we photograph. We wish we could do more. There's this constant living with our subjects, and I think that's really important.
Yep.
Yeah.
Carol?
I echo that. I feel like we're so blessed to have, to be graced with being able to see so much of the human condition and experience it with them. And sometimes you're shooting really dire situations, but you find these amazing moments of courage, or beautiful hearts that just restore your faith in humanity. And I think we have a window to the world that most people don't have, and through our camera we can possibly promote change, make a difference, and they shine that light. I mean, not only shine the light, but be the light. I mean, I think we also have to be ethical human beings, and we are not the enemy. And it scares me so much how this rhetoric is going around right now. I mean, every photojournalist that I know is, for 3 decades, serious photojournalists are compassionate, sensitive, empathetic people. There couldn't be a more important word for what we do is empathy. And we're so fortunate that we get to live their lives and walk their path and possibly tell their story as best we can.
And I appreciate that too, because I've had the good fortune and blessing of working with all 3 of these ladies. And I remember when I started working on a project with the Ronald McDonald House and cancer children, I called Deanne Fitzmaurice and Amy, and I said, this is uncharted territory for me, because I'd go in to shoot these portraits and I didn't want to know anything about these subjects, because I felt like if I kept myself disconnected, it'd be a lot easier to walk out the door and not cry. But you have to become emotionally attached. And I remember the one word that has stuck with me, Amy, is show them dignity. Because I had asked, well, when do you stop taking pictures? Or when do you put down the camera? And when do you help out? Or when do you hold a hand instead of taking a picture? When do you wrestle on a floor? And between you and Deanne, I was coached into wrestle with them first, play with them first, pick up the camera second. And when you make that picture, it's got to show the dignity, within them. So I thank you guys for all of that and everything you bring in here. So, Josh, do we have a microphone? We have a few minutes left. Does anybody feel like they have questions they'd like to ask of these ladies? Because I'd like to pass the microphone around and offer that opportunity now. Is there anyone that wants to grab that now? We have no questions?
No one's brave enough.
Yes, we do. Josh, come up. Sorry, we didn't see you right away.
So glad to see you guys and hear from you. You went to China for the Panda Research Center. It's amazing there. I was there. And besides those photos, what kind of impression you get from that center?
Sorry, what kind of impression did I get from the Panda Center? So that was sort of it's funny because you look at pandas and you think, how hard can photographing a panda be? But let me tell you, it was much harder than you realize because, one, they're incredibly elusive creatures. They've been around the planet for 8 million years and were only discovered to mankind in 1936. That was the first one they captured alive. So they're very elusive. And also, these are million-dollar bears, the ones that are in captivity. They treat them with kid gloves and are very protective over their million-dollar babies. So a photographer getting in the way was the last thing they cared about. So I had to really pay attention both to the the welfare of the pandas and also my minders, and sort of navigate to tell this incredible story of taking a species that was highly endangered, and it actually got off the most endangered species list recently. So I hope I answered what you were asking.
Very good.
Thank you.
So let's finish up then. What are you doing now? What's happening with you?
I just got back from Yemen and northern Nigeria, back to back, and now I'm on book tour. So I have a new book out.
And the name of the book again?
Of Love and War, and it's like 20 years of work, and published by Penguin. And yeah, it came out 2 days ago. So I'm traveling around the country in Europe.
Carol, what are you working on these days?
I'm still flapping around in the freelance world. I'm doing a lot of little stories, but I'm planning on going back to Yemen with the medics that I covered in Mosul. So that's my goal for the moment, is to try to get the visa and get on the ground with them in Yemen.
Amy, what you got going?
I am not home till Christmas, and among the stories I'm working on, the next species is giraffe. So I'm doing a deep dive into giraffe all over Africa, and headed to Niger in 3 days.
Wow.
And most recently, you introduced a book on the Panda Project, no?
Oh, I have my book, Panda Love, The Secret Lives of Pandas, if anyone's interested.
Well, thank you guys for sharing time with us.
Thank you.
Ladies, to me, this is just probably one of the best programs, honestly, I have ever done. Every time I hear you guys speak, I learn something else. I hope you guys were inspired by the work they do that you've seen behind us going through the entire program. Thank you guys for coming. Stick around for more presentations coming up. And feel free to say hello to these ladies before they take off, and we won't see you for a few months. Thank you, guys.